Hello, friends. Oh my goodness. Okay, there's a little bit of an upset boy there. Hello, friends. Sorry about that. Hi, welcome back to my channel. It's Katie Joy. This video has been something I've been wanting to do for quite a while. And because last week I dove back into live streaming and I haven't been on live for a long time, I was a little bit out of it. I spent a little bit too much time dealing with the chat. So for this video, I'll be focusing primarily on sorry, I got hair on my lips, the content at hand. And we have a bunch of content that we need to get through. This is going to be a lot that I've been holding on to for a very long time. So one of the cool parts of my job is that I have been able to meet a lot of people that are from a very secretive group called the Apostolic United Brethren. This group is very good about keeping things on the DL and not letting the public know what they're up to. The interesting thing about this church is it's a 501c3, so it has what's called nonprofit tax exempt status. And despite the fact that it's a public church, there is no public facing website. There is also no public church services. So if you were to go, if you were going to go to the AUB right now in Bluffdale and you wanted to go into the church, you probably wouldn't be allowed inside. In fact, one of my followers who was previously a member and is a family member of one of the founders was at the church last year. And they tried to go to the church. They tried to walk into the church and they were greeted by men with walkie-talkies that actually followed them around and followed them through the facility. And they were very concerned about who this person was. Why are they at our church? What are they doing? It's a sort of a weird, it's kind of weird if you think about it. Like if you have a public church and anyone can attend and it's a 501c3, you would think that they would have public services. You would think that anyone would be welcome, but not at the Apostolic United Brethren. Now, another interesting note is that what I'm going to show you tonight is not necessarily private. All of these videos were publicly available at one time on a public website. However, when Dave Watson became aware of the fact that I had access to these, the AUB locked down that public website. And now the only way anyone can get into this website is by being a member with a current recommend, meaning they have to prove their worthiness to the church for why they should be allowed to view things. Also, to go to any events at the AUB, you also have to have what's called a recommend. And the recommend, again, is a meeting that you have to do with leaders where you prove your worthiness. Now, not all people that are a part of the AUB have recommends. And so the only people that can access these videos today are people that are from the AUB, which is, again, kind of weird if you have a public church and you're claiming to be a public nonprofit. So Utah is its own little world. And the AUB has been running out of Bluffdale since, I think, the 1950s or 60s. The church itself was an offshoot of what was the Council of Friends, which was like a bunch of guys that were all going to practice fundamentalism. And when that Council of Friends got split up, what had to do with one person named Joseph Musser passing. And when he was ill, he was being cared for by one Rulon Allred, who was not initially a member of the Council of Friends. And when he became ill, Musser decided that Rulon was going to take over for the group when he passed, which upset a lot of people. There was some guys down in Short Creek, namely Johnson, I think Leroy Johnson, that believed he was the next in line. And so there was a huge split at this point, and it was in the 1950s. And the 1950s is when the AUB's first prophet, Rulon Allred, became, and they started the Apostolic United Brethren. And then that's when the FLDS, which is now under the rule of Warren Jeffs, became their own group. The LeBaron group that was down in Mexico became their own group. And so they've all been kind of segmented since the 1950s. There are other groups like the Kingstons, which are known as the Order, but the Kingstons, I don't believe were ever a part of the group of 7 or 12 friends. And I could be totally butchering the groups, but so for the first time tonight, I'm going to do a few things. One is going to be, I'm going to show you some videos of what it's like inside this place. But for the purpose of, I don't want to get sued, and some of these men are litigious, it's going to be blurred out. So you're not going to be able to see faces. The only video that I will be showing you that has a face is of David Watson, who is the current prophet of the AUB. And I want to just show you who he is so you can see, oh, this is the guy that's leading this church. Now, the AUB has an interesting belief. One of their beliefs is that they stand in sort of side by side to the LDS church. Some of the groups in fundamentalism completely reject the teachings of the Latter-day Saints, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is known as the mainstream church, because they disavowed the principle. They don't do the fullness of the gospel. They don't practice all aspects. So the AUB is different because they sort of court the LDS because they need members. And many of the members are encouraged to maintain dual membership in the church. So to give you a perfect example of someone that and continued to have dual membership would be Robin Brown's dad, Paul Howard Sullivan, the senior. So Robin's dad, Paul, was not only a member of the AUB, but he also was able to maintain dual membership in the LDS. And so when Paul actually passed away, he actually had his funeral at an LDS church, not at the temple, at a church in St. George. So even though he was a public polygamist, even though he was on TLC's Sister Wives, even though her mom was on Sister Wives, somehow Paul Sullivan was able to maintain dual membership in both the LDS and in the AUB. And so when people don't believe me that there's actually polygamists in the church, I think you should be surprised. You shouldn't be surprised, and you should also know that this is happening. I'm going to show you a video right now, which happens to be of Dave Watson welcoming his group to the LDS, to an event which was all about relationships. We're not going to watch the whole relationships video, but I want to hear you see, first I want you to see who he is. And second, I want you to hear what he says about the church. And then the third point that's very interesting here is that Dave Watson has someone that's coming in from the LDS church that's doing the seminar. So this is someone that teaches and is a promoter of the LDS faith. They have they're on a radio network. They do conferences all over the place. They're part of a group of LDS creator type people that have radio shows. And this person is going into the polygamous groups and teaching them about relationships. Kind of weird when the LDS always says they're separated from the polygamists. So that's another thing. And then also on top of that, Dave Watson, who I'm going to show you here up in a second, he was a counselor for Kody and Robin. So if you haven't seen my interview with Dave Watson's daughter, her name is Emily Lee, she did an interview with me last year, the first interview she ever did before going public. She's since done a couple interviews with Doris Hanson, who has the YouTube channel and the podcast called Polygamy, What Love Is This? If you haven't watched Doris's channel or listened to her podcast, she interviews people from all of the groups. It's such a incredible podcast. Doris herself comes from the Kingston group, and she left when she was 18 or 19 years old. So she has the experience of growing up in the order and then leaving once she became an adult. She's sort of like escaping polygamy before they escaped polygamy. Okay, so here, let's jump into this video of Dave.
Denominational.
So before we start into this is Dave. And this video is actually at what's called the RCA building, which is in Bluffdale, Utah. So when you go and look up online and you see that there are a picture of a white building, and it's like, this is the Apostolic United Brethren's church. That's where they're at right now. And this is him welcoming people to what's called a fireside conference seminar.
Speaker, he speaks to all kinds of people, including polygamists, because we are cousins. We're LDS cousins. We all believe the same thing. Their belief is timing. And so I tell the poor LDS that want to live plural marriage in the millennium, it's going to be kind of hard to do that without a body. But, you know, they're kind of stuck on that one. So thank you all so much.
So here Dave is basically explaining, if you don't understand how the LDS faith works, there is a subset of people that are part of the LDS church. And I don't know what the official belief system is of the LDS church, but there's this belief that polygamy is no longer allowed in the mortal life, but that people will practice polygamy when they get into the celestial kingdom. And so he is saying that we are just like the LDS church. The only difference between us and the LDS church is the timing. We're practicing on earth and they're going to practice in the celestial kingdom. And he's saying, well, you're going to practice this once you don't have a body. And how fun is that? Like, you should be a polygamist while you can have a body. So I hope that gives you some context.
For making the effort to be here tonight. Invited my lifelong friends, John and Narelle Canan, to be here this evening to give this presentation. These are life-changing communication skills that will change your life. Basic communication skills are paramount. I have been with all of my wives through all of John and Narelle Canan's presentations for years and years, and it has made a difference in my family, in our lives. I have a new bride here tonight that is going to be exposed to this for the first time. I've been doing communication classes since 1995, but I can tell you with my LDS friends, the tools that they have that they're presenting here have changed my life. They've changed my ladies' lives. They will change your life. So will you help me help you? This is a huge job, and what I'm finding is that there's a common denominator. The faces can be different.
Okay, so I want to just say something here. The very interesting thing about Dave Watson is that Dave Watson claims that he has 8 wives, although it's debatable that he actually has 8 wives, because one of the wives that he had was his first wife, and he's not with his first wife anymore. In fact, he divorced his first wife, and then he has another wife that has left the group, but is sort of like been kicked out to the pasture, and she's like disobedient and isn't allowed to have any relationships with him. And I believe that he actually only has 5 active wives, but yet he counts 8 wives as his wives. Now, here is why I said this in a video yesterday. I believe that Kody Brown still counts some of the women as his wives because they didn't get releases from the church. So Kody and Robin said, you have to go back to the church to get a release because that's what's called a spiritual divorce. Well, because Christine didn't go get a release, because Janelle hasn't gotten a release, and even Mary hasn't gotten a release, it's probable that Kody still even is counting them as their spiritual wives, even though publicly he says he's a monogamist. Because if Kody still believes, and he said as much so in a podcast, that he was unwilling to throw out the Doctrine and Covenants, he was unwilling to sort of throw the baby out with the bathwater. He doesn't want to get rid of all of this because it's given him his life experience. He likely counts those women as his wives still. And that's what a lot of polygamous men do. I know it sounds wild, but that is 100% what Dave does.
But the problems are exactly the same. So take it from me. I love you. I want to help you. I'm here for you. I'm not leaving anyone behind. God bless you.
Thank you, Dave. Let's hear it for Dave. I love that, Brother Dave. Thank you. Brothers.
So this is what the actual inside of the AUB RCA building looks like. If you were going to go to church, this is where they would go to church. They have a separate building where they actually have endowments, where they do the temples and they do the sealings for the marriages and they do their private sealing. So this is the interior of the RCA building, and it hasn't really changed a whole lot at all. Okay, so this is incredibly, I turned on my comments. I got to stop doing that because I'm getting distracted. So this is what the interior of it looks like. So when someone goes in and becomes a prophet, they get to change all kinds of rules. Okay, so I'm going to remove this. I want to show you something because this is kind of more proof that Dave really buys into this idea of he believes that they are a connection, they're connected to the LDS church. He believes wholeheartedly that they are going to become united again from the church. So they don't want to deviate too much because they do believe that the LDS will come back to polygamy and they will be restored. So here is the new rules. So anytime a new prophet becomes the prophet in the AUB, they create their own rules. In a video this week, I shared with you how Lynn Thompson decided that dogs were no longer allowed in the house when prayer. Dogs were not allowed for spiritual prayer. Dogs could not be in the bedroom. Remember how Kody and Janelle they don't like to do bedroom stuff together. Like he didn't want the dogs in the bedroom. That's from Lynn. Lynn also decided and brought back that procreation was the only time anyone could have sex. So no man would be able to be intimate with a woman unless they could procreate. So that's another tidbit, is that once you stop having babies under the AUB teachings, you can no longer have physical contact with your wives. Now, I don't know where Dave stands on that in his belief system. I don't know what's changed or what's not changed, but I do know that he's created what's called the standard bearer. And the standard bearer happens to be, let me see if I can make this bigger. A guide for all the things that they're going to tell kids and their followers what they have to abide by. Now, one of the biggest problems we're seeing in this group is that it's becoming more and more insular. It's becoming more and more locked down. And a lot of people from the group that have recently left have said it's becoming more like Short Creek. Now, if you don't know what that means they believe the group is becoming more like the FLDS under Warren Jeffs, where they are controlling marriages, they are controlling clothing, they are controlling language that people can use, media that they can watch. They're controlling who can court and who can't court. They're controlling how much money you tithe. They are pushing people towards the law of consecration, which is where you all live on property owned by the AUB. And it's kind of like what they do with the order or what they've done with the compound down in Short Creek. So this whole thing has guidelines for what you should wear for dressing, what you should do for education, what you should engage with for entertainment and media, what you should do for your family, what kind of friends you should have, your gratitude, honesty, integrity, language, music, dancing, physical and emotional health, purity and virtue, repentance, Sabbath observations, services, tithing and consecration, words of wisdom, and work and self-reliance. And then it has this whole forward by Dave, which says that this actual pamphlet was designed for them, but it's something that the LDS faith uses. So they're using the model of what the LDS church already uses, and they're making it their own. So again, why this matters is there's people from the AUB that are jointly holding membership in the LDS. And so they can easily bring someone to one of their meetings, try to recruit them into this church, and they're able to show them, here's our pamphlet. And people will feel comfortable because it looks a lot like the LDS church. It's disingenuous because it's not the same. He says, throughout my youth, I often considered rules, policies, and principles of the gospel. It was not always easy to ascertain where to begin in forming a foundation, developing a testimony, and reforming my character. To answer the questions of the youth, I have long desired a compilation of reference materials that is easily accessible for our people. that should spell out the priesthood standards commonly referenced within our communities. While the pamphlet does not go into great detail, it does provide a starting point for you to search. Now, this is written by one of their youth leaders named Christian Hess. It goes into their priesthood, what their articles of faith are. You know, something I had no idea is that they believe in the gift of tongues. I didn't realize that. So the AUB, the church that the Kody Brown family is a part of, or that they made famous, they believe in the gift of tongues, revelation, visions, healing, interpretation, and tongues. It says, we believe the same organization that existed in the primitive church, apostles, prophets, pastors, teachers, evangelists, and so on. So they follow the same structure and order as the LDS mainstream church. They believe that there's going to be a literal gathering of Zion. And so there's Zion that they're building. They've got a couple Zions. They've got one that's in Pinesdale. They've got another Zion that's in Eagle Mountain. They've got another Zion that's in Rocky Ridge. They have all these like insular communities where the property is owned by the AUB, and the AUB owns everything. And then people can build houses on the property, but the homes are built and owned by the person, but they don't own the land. So if someone leaves, the AUB gets their house. And right now in Pinesdale, what's happening is people are having to sue the AUB because they're leaving the church and they don't have rights to it because they own the land. So this just sort of gives you, I've showed this in videos before, but I wanted to also just pop back out here and I'll stop sharing that screen. There's a lot here. I'm going to jump over to comments to see if there's anything. Everyone's so crushed that like button. Thank you to everyone that's become a member. And there's a, I love your content. Keep up the good work. Thank you. One thing to do is that because I am not viewing the chat regularly, if you have a specific question that you want me to get to, the system that I'm using automatically stars super chats. And so if you have a question, it'll go to my starred column and I can see your questions there. Otherwise, I won't be directly reading comments during the stream. So just to give you that. Okay. Okay. So Robin, someone said, I thought that Robin said that if Mary, Christine, and Janelle bone someone else, then their spiritual marriages to Kody are over. So technically, yes, you can bone someone else and have the spiritual relationships be over. But also, Janelle has said that she doesn't know that she wants to be in another relationship. And also, really, the guys can do a lot of mental gymnastics to decide what their rules are. And so it's very unclear what Kody is going to make for his decision about who he qualifies as a wife and who he doesn't qualify as a wife. I love that you're doing lives again. Thank you. Robin makes crap up. Yeah, that's true too. Okay. So I showed you the video of Dave Thompson or Dave Watson. That's the current prophet. Now, Dave Watson is interesting because Dave Watson actually counseled Robin and Kody when they first got married. And when Sister Wives went live and went on air, one of the primary reasons Sister Wives went public is they wanted to decriminalize the polygamist laws in Utah. So they wanted to make it an infraction. They did not want to make it legal. They wanted to make it decriminalized because legalizing that would actually place the men in equal standing with the women. Hear what I'm saying? By decriminalizing it, they still aren't on the hook for child support because they can still stay off of the birth certificates. By decriminalizing, they don't have to have multiple marriage licenses, meaning the women don't have access to the same amount of property rights, meaning that they don't have to share assets. When you legalize it, then the women and the men are all on the same footing. And the polygamous men did not want that at all. They wanted it decriminalized. They didn't want it legalized. Because if it's legal, then the women have rights. By decriminalizing it, the women still are able to live a life being subjugated. Okay. The next part I wanted to show you.
Don't care.
Now, this is an interesting video. This is one I've showed you bits and pieces of, but this is from a courtship fireside that was held back in 2022. Now, I'm blurring this man out because this man actually tried to file a privacy complaint. This is how strange these polygamous men are. This is a public church. This was on a public website. That's where I got this video from. And it looks like Minecraft. You're right. And when I put this video up, this man that's in this video that was on a public website tried to file a privacy complaint against me when he was on public video at a public church at a 501c3 institution. I do not have a Discord. No. Okay. So I will just be sharing with you that this was an event that they held for the youth. Now they have a group called Yaz Youth, which is the Youth of Zion. And they are the youth group of the AUB. And they do different firesides, different events throughout the year. They have camps. Interestingly, Mary Brown was a camp counselor for the women's camp, for the girls' camp. So I was able to find back in 2015 or 2016, Mary was actually a camp counselor. So they do a week-long camp for the girls, and Mary was actually in charge of organizing that. And she was one of the women that was in charge of all of the girls. They separate the camp by gender. And so they have a week for the girls and a week for the boys. And what the girls learn is how to be a homemaker, wife, and mom. And what the boys do is learn how to be a protector, how to defend their families, and how to, guard women's purity. Okay. So this is actually something that was done back in 2022, and it's talking to children of the youth group. Now, the youth group is from kids that are 12 to 16 to 17 years old. So this is minors that they're talking to, and they're talking about what the rules are for courtship.
And it has no place among the saints. So we do not believe in just dating to get to know for the fun of it. And some people might think, well, how in the world can I get to know somebody, to know if I even want to court them or ask about them or say yes if they ask about me? So that would go into some social events. And there are many different activities and events that we can get to know one another in a controlled environment or a chaperoned environment, such as youth activities, sacrament meetings, firesides about courting. Let's see, dances, trips, plays, a lot of different social activities in environments in which you can see how people interact with others. You can get to know their character a little bit more. There's many types of activities that you can get to generally get to know somebody in a social situation.
So what I want to what I want to point out about this is that with courtship, he's telling kids that they are not allowed to date. In fact, they're not allowed to even get to know someone outside of the context of the church. They're not allowed to decide if they like someone on their own. They're not allowed to go on a date one-on-one with someone. They're not allowed to talk to someone of the opposite sex outside of church. And he's telling people the only way that you're going to learn and to decide who you want to marry is by going to church events. You can come to firesides. You can go to dances. You can go to the sacrament meetings. You can go to different church activities, but you have to go through the church. And that's the only way that you can interact with someone of the opposite sex. It limits their ability to actually get to know anyone. And they also encourage short courtships. So when someone makes the decision to court someone, they might not even know that person. They've just seen them at church. They've talked to them a couple times, but they've never spent any one-on-one time with them. And they're courting with the intention to marry. And they're only able to get married if they're approved by the prophet. They're only allowed to court if the brethren give them permission to court. So they can't date. They can't know the person they're going to court. They barely can interact with them. And the church is controlling who they can court. They could decide tomorrow that they don't want to let this person court.
And in these types of environments, I would just stress to keep your conversation, what was the word I was going to use? Appropriate, yes. If you're dancing, how are you doing? This is my name. What's your name? How do you like this dance? Not, how old are you? Who's your dad? What's your Snapchat handle? Let me send you my TikTok handle. We can go. That would be beyond the bounds of an appropriate conversation. Okay.
So they're not even allowed to ask someone who your father is. What's your Snapchat handle? What do you do for work? What do you like to do? They can't ask any invasive questions. They have to keep it to like high-level pleasantries. No invasions of anything. Nothing. So how does someone make the decision to court if they can't even get to know someone before they know who the person is? He's literally dictating what they can say to the person that they might be interested in.
Okay, pre-courtship. Let's touch on some pre-courtship standards or ways that we can get to know, well, what to do before you get to the point where you're ready to ask about somebody, okay? Or before you're officially courting. So I would just say avoid unnecessary, lengthy phone calls, text messages into the late hours of the night, pairing off, unnecessary, excessive letters, sharing personal information, spending excessive time together, arranging private meetings, telling each other how you feel about each other.
So they're not even allowed to do anything. They're not allowed to be alone. They're not allowed to tell each other if they like each other. They're not allowed to share any personal information with one another. They're not allowed to go out by themselves. They have to do everything in groups. They're not allowed to spend a lot of time on the phone. They're not allowed to ask invasive questions. There's a lot of rules here to keep things very superficial, which means that when these people are getting married, especially the girls, they don't know who they're marrying. So Christine might have known very limited about Kody. She met him through the church. She knows that he has Mary. She's friends with Mary, but she doesn't know much about Kody. And then when she marries Kody, she realizes that this bubbly person that he was telling her that he is actually not that person at all. And he's much more serious, and he's much more dark, and he's much more difficult than she anticipated. But she was not allowed to know him beyond a superficial level at all.
And how cute you think they are, or how much you love spending time with them. Things like this. Maybe not sitting with this individual at every activity exclusively. That would be, those are behaviors that's a behavior that would fall in a category if you've gone through the proper steps and you've entered into an understanding of courtship, or exclusively dancing with each other. That's just you're the only two that can dance with each other. Another one that I've seen here would be a boy and a girl who like each other, and another boy and a girl who like each other, and they just say, well, we're just going to go on it's a group event, it's a youth event, social event. There's a word for it. That's called a double date.
So they're controlling every aspect of the relationship prior to them even being allowed to court. Don't even sit next to the person that you might be interested in. You're not allowed to sit next to them. You're not allowed to have one-on-one conversations with them. You cannot go even on a group event with them. So you can't even go out with a bunch of friends and have them there with you. They can't be there. That would be called a group date. So they're not allowing any females and males, young men and women, to interact in any capacity. So they really do not know each other at all. I'm going to see if I can try to find the part where he talks about
that. Creepy. The Lord's timing to let that mature into a release, and how cute they are, and that kind of stuff. So keep it within the bounds of the young lady. And I prayed about it. And the Lord told me that, yeah, she was going to be in my family for the Lord's timing to work. Okay, when we were preparing, we hadn't had.
Okay, this is the part where he's going to explain the pre-mortal existence. So there's been a lot of discussion by the sister wives about pre-mortal spirit babies. Now the LDS practices this faith as well, but the LDS practices it completely different to how the AUB describes it to their followers. He describes that in the pre-mortal existence, they're all up in heaven and they go to school. This is wild.
Not a body yet. We're just spirits up in heaven, preparing to come down on earth to receive a body and to go through some experiences of mortality. We sat in classes similar to this, and we had people teaching us that, hey, we're going to go down to earth, and we're going to get a body, and we're going to put clay over our spirit, and it's going to be strange and weird. And we're like, really, huh? We didn't understand how that would be because we could only read about it, but we could not comprehend it until we actually came down and got a body. But I'm telling you that you guys were the ones in the classes, in the meetings, listening to the instructions, taking notes, and practicing and being faithful to the priesthood in heaven. And because of that, the Lord gave you more options and choices and decisions.
Okay, so basically what he's telling them, this is wild because it's leading up to something. He's like building up to this crescendo, which we'll get to in a second. But he tells them that even before they were born, they existed in the premortal phase as spirits. But they weren't just spirits in heaven just floating around. No. He says they're living in there. They go to school. They have families. They're doing all these things. But it's only the spirits that are in heaven that are the most elite and the most dedicated that are actually brought down to join this priesthood. So he's telling them that even before they were born, they were picked by someone to come to earth to fulfill a mission. So he's making them feel like their whole destiny was already God-inspired and controlled, and they're only coming down here for one reason, and that's to fulfill the mission of the fullness of the gospel.
And you had the ability, because of your faithfulness in heaven, to some degree or another, organize your families. You say, hey, I want them to be my parents. And you found other spirits that you loved and committed to come down as family units. Your husband, wife, children. We organized to some degree or another our families.
He is telling them that even before they were born, while they were spirits in heaven, they had already organized their families. They already have their husband picked before they're even born or their wife picked. They already know who their children are. They already know every aspect of their lives. They know who their parents are. They've picked everything. So that once they come down to here, there's no choice. They're basically saying, you've already made this choice, right? There's actually no choice because it was already decided before you were ever born. So when you have a little girl or a little boy that are going to go into this culture and they say, well, this is a God-inspired choice, and the brethren are telling you this is the person you're supposed to marry, they're already setting the stage to the kids that you can't say no to the priesthood because they're the ones getting direct revelation from God, okay? So if they're getting direct revelation from God and you've already picked out all of your husbands and wives before you were ever born, who are you to say no to the individuals that have directly inspired relationships and getting messages from God? To say no to someone in the priesthood would be akin to saying no to God.
And you had the ability to do that because you cared, because it was important to you. You wanted to perpetuate the fullness of the gospel and the priesthood on this earth as you were doing the best of your ability in the premortal life. And I want to emphasize this because a lot of people in heaven, a lot of spirits in heaven, really didn't care. Not that they were bad. Well, some were. We kicked them out of heaven. But a lot of others weren't necessarily bad. It just wasn't as important to them to go to the meetings, to take the notes, to go to their priesthood meetings and relief societies and girls' class.
So he's saying that in heaven, when they were spirits, they were going to relief society meetings, they were going to boys and girls meetings, they were going to sacrament meetings and firesides. He's saying that even before you were ever born, you knew who your husband was going to be. You knew who your dad and mom were going to be. You were actually living a full life up there. You only came down here for the purpose to fulfill that goal that you had up there. Now, you might not have the direct revelation yourself of who you're supposed to marry. And see, because you, when you were up there, obeyed the priesthood in heaven, you can obey the priesthood down here. My husband said they're going to gaslight these women and children into marrying someone that they don't know. And that is correct. What this is called is gaslighting. It's manipulative tactics to make people feel like they cannot say no to a choice from God.
Meetings and youth meetings in heaven. And because of that, they did not have the opportunity to choose their families. They really didn't care. They said, I don't really care when we go down. Yeah, we got to go.
Okay, this comment right here is amazing. I wonder if Robin was running around in heaven lying before she got here. Oh, thank you, Smiley. That's a little comic relief. Maybe Robin was lying. All right, thank you, Smiley.
Get a body, so what? Let me know when it's my time. This is Brother Rulin, August 16th, 1975.
So here's the thing. This group, Rulin Allred, was their first prophet of the AUB. And they look at him as the martyred prophet, the one that died. And so they very much still revere Rulin as the one true prophet of their church. Like, Rulin is God to them. And they still use his teachings and his manuscripts and everything. So here is him reading Rulin to them.
The people of the world who were not born of the children of Israel.
Oh, and I want to point out that he's going to read it in what's called a reverence voice. So the men in this church, when they speak from the gospel and they speak from these articles that Mr. Rulin gave to the church, they always change their voice. They try to sound more like, I'm getting more revelation, I'm getting more connection to God. So he completely changes his cadence and how he speaks. And yes, Rulin Allred was Christine's grandfather. Rulin was killed by the family connected to, at the hit, he was killed by two women that were, the hit was ordered by Ervil LeBaron. So yeah.
Israel, or who do not have the blood of Israel in their veins. You have the blood of Israel in your veins. But these other folks born today on the earth do not have the blood of Israel in the veins. They do not hear their master's voice. In the spirit world, the majority of these people took the position, I don't care when I go down. I don't care who I marry or when I marry. I'm having such a good time, I don't care who my father and mother are. Now, believe it or not, that was the attitude of the majority of God's children to the spirit of man, in the spirit world.
So he's basically repeating what Rulin said. Rulin told everyone that the reason why they came down here is because they were chosen as the children of Israel. And they're here on a mission to fulfill the fullness of the gospel, which is plural marriage. You can only fulfill the fullness of the gospel in this teaching by practicing polygamy. And on top of that, this is a doomsday cult, okay? So they believe that in their lifetime, the world is going to end, that Jesus will return, and that their group, the AUB, is going to be the chosen people that will be saved by Jesus and go to heaven. They believe everyone else that does not believe like them are wicked and evil. They don't believe anyone that's outside of their group will be saved. They are the only group that will be saved. So they believe they are the one true church. Their leader is the one strong and mighty, and they are going to usher in the next coming, the second coming. And what's ironic here is that every time one of the prophet dies and Jesus doesn't return, you would think the system would just completely break down. I mean, every single prophet says that in their lifetime, they're going to bring in Jesus and the end of the world.
Amazing. But not you. You did have choices. You were faithful in the premortal life. That's why you're here today. That's why you have been given an opportunity to be associated with the priesthood of God on the earth today.
So he's telling them that they are the priesthood of God. These are the only people in the world that matter to God. Their group is the only group that matters. And they were hand-picked and hand-selected to come down here to fulfill this mission. And they often call what they're doing their mission. They call it the work. They say that they have to fulfill the mission. Their mission is to bring back Jesus.
So, don't be motivated by fear and trust in the Lord. And He will lead you right, and to the right person. I'll read one more quote two more quotes. Okay? So the reason I'm bringing this out, well, several, but one of them also is that we're not motivated by fear, and that we approach. Okay, they're a protection for you and to you. And if followed properly, you will avoid undue pressure and unnecessary awkward situations. From heaven come with a drawn sword and say, thou shalt marry so-and-so, before you even ask. Sometimes it might just be, I know that the Lord wants me to do this. I don't even know why. I'm going forward in faith.
So he is telling them how they're going to pick their spouses. He tells them that they need to get into the revelation and they need to hear God's voice. And even if they don't know the person, if God gives them a name, that's the person that they're supposed to marry. So say you're just sitting there one day and you're like at church and it's like, oh, Kody Brown. Well, that must have been Kody Brown that came. It was destiny. I'm supposed to. And he's telling them, you cannot ignore that. You cannot ignore that voice.
Okay. But the important part is that you're finding His will and not just pushing your will. I learned this the hard way. Of counsel. And I was asking the Lord for revelation, even if it's small. And if you learn to develop revelation,
Favorite quote that has helped.
ask parents, consult with them. Generally, for the most part, they're experts at this. They've done this before. And you'd be surprised at the wisdom that your parents have.
So when they have someone in mind, before they can even approach that person, they have to go to the parents and ask their parents. And then the parents can decide if the parents are going to pray on it and decide if they have a revelation. If mom and dad have a revelation and say this is okay, then mom and dad will say, okay, now you can approach the brethren, and then the brethren will approach the parents of the other people. There's a lot of steps in place for someone to actually court. And by the time it gets to the girl, so like, let's put this into your position of a boy. A boy says, I want to date Robin Brown. I'm just going to use her name. She has to go to her dad. Robin goes to Paul. Paul says, I've prayed about it. Yes, it's okay. Kody has to go to Paul, or Kody has to go to his parents first. Then his parents say, yes, I've prayed about it. It's fine. Then he has to go to the brethren, who says, okay, yes, that's fine. Then the brethren will approach Paul, or he can go directly to Paul, who is her dad. And then Paul will say, okay, I'll give them permission to court. By the time the decision is made, and by the time the woman gets the person's name, the man, their parents, the brethren, and her parents have all prayed and been told by revelation that this relationship is ordained by God. And so if she's going to say no, she is saying no to God. So really, there's no choice. There's no choice
In this topic. So tell them about your experience when you prayed to the Lord and the impressions that you got. Get their counsel, ask them for.
I'm trying to find the part where he talks about approaching a man.
Are you responsible individuals to be ready for? That's a big one, though. You go to your meetings, providing for a family, focusing and preparing that the individual lives that you're asking about. And I don't think the instructions have been clear on. So yeah, if you're asking about somebody who's already married.
Okay. So now he's going to talk about if you're asking about someone who's already married. This is for the girls. He is telling 12-year-old girls that they are allowed to ask about a man that is married. 12-year-old girls are being told that their only way into the celestial kingdom is by marrying a married man. So he is going to tell 12-year-old girls what steps to take to become a plural wife. 12-year-old girls.
Okay. Then when you're talking to the council, yes. And talk with the person. Do not try to influence. So yeah, if you're asking about somebody who's already married, young ladies, and that would be, well, young or old, the council member generally would say, well, let me talk with him, and then I'll get back with you. And then once he gets back with you, well, either way, on both cases, whether they're married or not, then you can set up the meeting to meet and talk with the person directly. Whew, that's scary.
So a 12-year-old girl is told that if they want to be with someone who's married, they have to approach the brethren. And the brethren will decide if this 12-year-old girl can join a family. Now, they also say, by the way, that the age for marriages is dependent on whether or not you're a first wife or a plural wife. So if you're a first wife, you cannot get married. If you're a first wife, you do not have to be 18 years old. They say that girls can marry generally as long as they have parental consent. I think it's 16 years old in Utah. So A 25-year-old man can approach a 16-year-old girl. He's not been married yet. He doesn't have any wives. And he can approach the family of the 16-year-old and say, I want to marry your daughter. He doesn't have any other wives, so he can actually take in an underage, he can take a young bride in because he can get the consent of the parent to sign off on that. If this wasn't a relationship that was going to be consented to, this would actually fall under what's called statutory R. But they bypass the statutory R by allowing the guys in their mid-20s or 30s that aren't married yet to consider the younger girls that are naive. Now, if they are going to do plural marriage, they have to be at least 18. But in this case, the girls have been told since birth that their only way into the celestial kingdom is through plural marriage. So even by the time they're 18, they've already been groomed to accept that they might marry a man that's 50 when they're 18. Or they might marry a man that's 60 when they're 18. Now, this guy that is speaking, I want to tell you something. The guy that's telling these kids this, I'll share a story with you. I'm going to call him Joe. Joe was very into this girl that was his wife's niece. Joe and his wife moved in this niece when she was about 14 years old. The niece begins living with Joe and his wife. By the time the girl is 18 years old, Joe has a revelation that she is supposed to join his family. So his wife's niece, who he is not related to, is asked to join Joe's family. Whoops. Asked to join Joe's family. And he has already been working on her since she's been 14 years old. And she's the niece of his wife. When she turns 18, suddenly she's like, yes, of course I would join your family. Even though Joe and his wife raised this girl as a daughter. This girl became his plural wife the day she turned 18. So it's not as simple as saying we don't endorse underage marriages, because you would have to then ignore all of the years that they were working these girls to make them join their families. The man in the video did this. Yes, the man in the video actually did this. That's been confirmed to me by many people.
And let the Spirit of God direct the conversation. And there are a lot of things that you can talk about, bear your testimonies, and begin to develop a relationship. Let it grow and mature and blossom into what it needs to be. Let the Lord direct that. Okay. Why don't we just take a minute, we'll stand. Like manipulating someone to marry you. Is there a hand over here? Yes. We must allow people to exercise their agency. That's what we...
So here he's telling people that they have the right to say no. So everyone has the right to turn someone down. They have the agency to say no. I would love to know by a show of number ones or twos, if you've been told your whole life that your mission is to get married and that you find out that Joe wants to marry you when you're 18 years old, do you really have the agency to say no to Joe? Because Joe received revelation about marrying you. The brethren received revelation about the relationship. Your parents received revelation about that marriage. His parents received revelation. So by the time you're 18, everyone's had revelations and God has told them that you are supposed to marry them. Can you really exercise your own agency in that capacity? Yes or no? Could you technically say no? If you are a true believer, do you have the capacity to say no? No, exactly. 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 You can't say no. So when Janelle speaks about agency on the show, that's what she's talking about. She's speaking about they have the opportunity to say no, but they really don't. They don't.
He fought for the premortal life before he came down. We're not going to come down here and squash it. I don't want you to exercise agency because I think I know better. Or I want to remove the agency or the experience that this individual needs to go through. Okay? All right. The prophet Joseph Smith, as long as it's appropriate, which also goes for what you send on your phone, the text messages. Okay? After you are sealed for time and all eternity. Other between the elbow and the finger.
Okay, here's where he's going to tell them what kind of physical contact they can have. So not only do they control who you can marry and who you can't marry, they also control your physical contact. And what's hilarious about this is, do you remember on Sister Wives that when Robin said that she and Kody were very chaste in their relationship, they were very chaste in their courtship, they didn't break any of the rules, they remained virtuous and pure? I want you to hear what the rules are, and you'll see the reason why Christine was so upset was because Kody and Robin did not follow the rules of the group.
Fingertips, you'll be all right. On the wall. Okay? So getting to know each other spiritually, emotionally, verbally, physically, not yet. Maybe holding hands. Okay? Hugs, if any, should just be brief, gentle. If you touch each other between the elbow and the fingertips, you'll be all right. Okay? Holding hands is now a very bonding experience. And by limiting your touch from fingertip to elbow can really keep you keep temptation out of the physical relationship. Okay? First kiss should be saved for over the altar. Okay? After
First kiss should be saved for over the altar. They are not allowed to kiss before they get married. They're not allowed to make out. They're not allowed to do any of that. They are supposed to save their first kiss to over the altar. So by the time these people have gotten married, they have spent no real time together. They don't get to spend time alone. They don't get to kiss. They can only hold hands. They can't talk about anything deep or serious. They can't divulge who they are. They have to keep it at a level. And because the girls in the same video are also told that if they are going to become a plural wife, Thank you so much for your super sticker, Debbie Baker. I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone that's done super stickers. Let's do. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for Letitia. Thank you, Victoria. And thank you, Debbie. And thank you, CRL. And then to all of the new members, thank you for joining. Okay, so just to pop on back, let me just, thank you, Debbie. Yes. Okay, so by the time they're married, they don't even know each other. They're controlling all aspects of it. This is why Christine was so upset with Robin when Robin and Kody kissed before the marriage, because under this rule, they're not supposed to kiss. Little girls are also told that if they're going to join a family and they are going to be coming into a married man's family, they need to respect their other sister wives. So little girls are told that if they're going to court a married man, they are not supposed to kiss the married man until they're married over the altar when they're sealed in the temple for time and all eternity. If they're the first wife, they are also told not to break the rules because they need to anticipate. They need to anticipate that their husband will take on another wife. So they want to treat their relationship how they would want to be treated. So if they decide to become married, they shouldn't go out and kiss their husband before they get married, because if their husband had that experience with them, then they're going to go and kiss somebody else, and maybe even more. I do not do Cash Apps, so I don't do Cash Apps or Venmos or anything like that. I just try to keep it to doing the YouTube. I know some creators do that, but I try to just keep everything on YouTube, so all of my payments go through one place. But I appreciate it. And yes, YouTube does get a portion of the super chats, but all of it helps the channel. So we totally appreciate all of it. Thank you, Debbie. So Robin and Kody broke the rules before they ever started. So when Robin says we were chaste, they were not chaste. Not at all. Not even remotely. Okay. In all fairness, I want to do another live stream where we can go in more detail into that video. I don't want to show the whole thing because it's an hour and a half of stuff. So when Dave Watson came in as the prophet, he instituted a lot of these rules, and it's harder and harder now for people to get into their marriages, and they're even arranging marriages now. I actually spoke to one of the cousins of Christine Brown's first cousin, Preston Jessup's first cousin, which is Robin's ex-husband. And they told me that when her cousin's husband passed away, he left a bunch of wives, and they were pushing her to marry this other guy. And they were basically arranging it, saying, you need to go marry this guy. So they're also arranging marriages now. Yes, it's very sad.
As possible, but I did a cunning articulate from either one of us that this is, like a subject you don't want to hear about, or something that's heavy or negative, because we have so much to stand up for. We have so much positive, so much good that can come of this. And so I want you guys, if you feel negative at all, I want you to close your eyes for a second and ask the Lord to soften your heart.
So the kids are going to have a conversation. They're going to have a conversation with the children now about modesty, and they're going to take away a bunch of clothing options for the kids, which includes that young boys are no longer allowed to wear jeans to dances. And so if a kid shows up to one of the dances and that they host every month and they're wearing jeans, they will send them home. So they're controlling what people wear now. Girls are not allowed to wear certain clothing items anymore. So he's asking them, like, don't think about this negatively. Soften your heart. These rules are not meant to exclude. They're meant to help us become better people.
These are the brethren who are supposed to lead the church that are putting this kind of information out. And one of the things I'll point to after Brother Tyler is done is that this is all done. Not only does it hurt those that are in the church and are believers of truth, but even more so, it hurts those that haven't come to a knowledge of the truth and had an opportunity to receive testimonies and maybe even go further themselves. And we have to be that beacon of hope that latches on to truth and that keeps that standard held high. The Lord says he will have a people to come to. Who of us will be that people? Anyway, so let's go ahead and have Brother Tyler come up and...
Okay, so basically what he's telling them is that they are, again, the chosen people. They must accept these rules because they are the chosen ones. Few people are asked to walk in this army. And so they're making these rules not to restrict, not to make it so that you don't have choices, but to make sure that you can become a better soldier for Christ or whatever for their work. And they're going to go through all of the rules for modesty.
I'm not, if anything that gets said is offensive, I'm sorry. But I know what is offensive, and that's to set us all up, to set you up for criticism, for judgment, and stunted growth, even by avoiding this subject.
So their growth is going to be stunted if they do not talk about modesty standards for clothing.
We must be in complete harmony with our Heavenly Father and His Word so that we can bring about and influence.
Okay, so I want to just put this one out here. They're having a huge problem genetically in the AUB. They are having what's called, there's a new disorder that's gotten into their group. It's called GAN. It's a neurological syndrome that causes severe issues with muscle strength, neurological function, and it causes seizures, and it causes premature death. And it happens from when two people are related, have a child, because they both have to carry this recessive gene. And they do not watch very closely at all. And in fact, right now, they are having such a hard problem with so many of these different disorders entering into their culture. They are trying to recruit directly from the LDS Church. They are also trying to recruit from people in Mexico that are Mexican, from, national Mexican residents, not Americans living in Mexico, but actual Mexican residents, or directly recruiting from the LDS Church to try to dilute their gene pool because it's gotten so bad right now. They're trying to get fresh blood, correct?
Positive change in this priesthood work, in ourselves, and the ability to influence that change in our friends and our family can't be understated, and we must.
So just one more thing. The Kingstons do have a different line that they do, but that same problem has been a part of the AUB's So The Kingstons believed they're direct descendants from, or Tell Kingston believed he was a direct descendant from Jesus. And to protect his blood, everyone has to marry that has Kingston blood so that they don't dilute their pool and so that they all remain descendants from Jesus. This same practice was actually practiced by 3 brethren in the Apostolic United Brethren. Joe Thompson, who is actually Mitch Thompson, Aspen's husband. Joe Thompson, his is Mitch's grandfather. He practiced that, and so he did things with his daughters. There was also George Maycock that also believed that, so he did things with his daughters. And another one named Chevral Palacios, who also believed that and did things with his daughters. So this idea that what's happening in the Kingstons is limited to the Kingstons is actually false, and it's been an ongoing problem in the AUB as well. They just hide it better, way better.
Strive to live lives of holiness. Holiness is total devotion to God. So I want to start with a scripture here. So when I was young, I remember going to the Salt Lake Temple. Only unique, present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but
He's going to bring up his wife.
faith for yourself to that spot. What is it that makes us wired?
I'm going to get to the part where he brings up his wife. Hold on. Okay, this is his wife.
Okay, that's on. Okay.
She's going to tell the girls they have to get rid of clothes.
So I want to start with relating something that's very personal to me. As a teenager, I found myself vacillating between, and it sobered me. So moving forward, you might think, as you have heard and hear these different guidelines that are being set out, that the council is trying to place limits upon you. And what if I told you that you are exactly right, that they are trying to limit you? So if you will, close your eyes for just a minute and listen.
So the council is trying to limit the clothing that they can wear. But she's going to paraphrase this and make it seem like it's a good thing. So they created an entirely new sheet of rules that they must follow for clothing. And I'll show you the full list in a minute when I'm done with this.
I want you to think of a river. It's clear, cool, and refreshing. It's a large river, and its sound is deep and rushing and full of life. This river is channeled out of the mountains and into a little valley where it's used to irrigate lush fields. Its force is directed to generate power for a town nestled at the heart of this valley. You look out and you can define the exact path of the river because of the vibrant trees and other greenery that's growing at its banks. Everywhere this river travels, it gives life and power. Now imagine that this river begins to swell. It starts to rise up above its banks, breaking down the wall of dirt and earth that's been holding it back. Maybe this breakdown is a sudden, violent flash flood that tears through the valley, completely obliterating what was once a deeply carved river path. Or maybe it's slow, this constant pressure of rushing water that gradually erodes the banks until eventually it collapses and the water is free, no longer restrained. What happens now? The water rushes out, spreading itself across the valley in full force. As it spreads, it destroys the carefully tended fields and orchards, and then it wreaks havoc and devastation on the town that it once gave power to.
So basically, if you wear a tank top, you are going to destroy people's farms. You're going to destroy the world. You're going to destroy the kingdom because a tank top is going to make a man think bad thoughts. If you wear yoga pants, you're going to make the river burst, and that river of bursting is probably in his pants, and he's going to think impure thoughts. And so she's setting the stage like this is a benevolent thing, that the women, they're putting these in place to make sure that these women can be the vehicle to, bear the children for the kingdom and not make the holy men stumble.
As this water has spread its bank, then the flood that follows, because it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness, increased or decreased by the limits that have been set upon it.
Before we came here,
Hold on.
Fly from errors or faults, loving correction, and take action, of spirits, and live. For they indeed for a few days chastened us as seemed best to them, speaking of our fathers. But he, for our profit, chastened us that we may be partakers of his holiness. Now, no chastening seems to be joyful for the present, but painful. Nevertheless, afterwards, it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it.
Okay, so basically what she's saying here is that this change is going to be sort of a chastening because they've allowed sorry, Ellen's from this group. Thank you, Ellen. She's basically saying that like they are being chastened because they've allowed them to like ruin the river, and the men their minds have become polluted by all of what they're seeing with the girls and what they're wearing. Their minds are so polluted that the river is bursting in their pants.
Do you feel restrained? As well. To be brief, it was created by severely restricting the flow of the Colorado River.
Okay, so she basically spends 20 minutes telling a story about a river so that she can tell kids that they can't wear certain clothes anymore. She could have just said, this is what the list is, but instead she needed to make them feel like they're saving the river and they're saving the town and they're saving the kingdom. And so again, it's putting a level of fear into the children that if they don't abide by these rules, they are going to be the cause of destruction.
So just briefly, and you guys will be able to get lists of this, so I'm not going to go through it extensively. Just leggings, tights, yoga pants, spandex, lyrica, nylon, and such athletic wear are not acceptable alternatives to pants. They're only suitable as underclothing. Skin-tight t-shirts, muscle shirts, biker shorts, jeggings, contour outlining dresses or skirts are not suitable public attire. Let's loosen up. Don't reveal the clothing beneath your clothing. It's underclothing for a reason. Shredded jeans are a no-go. Keep your conversations free of vulgar or sensual related words, topics, sounds, or gestures. You guys be especially careful when you're texting. A good rule of thumb is if it's not something you would say to that person to their face in the presence of other people, don't text it. Avoid drawing undue attention to yourself with your body movement, loud laughter, conversation, selfie poses, flexing, or shocking statement styles. Does this mean we can't be creative with how we choose to present ourselves? Absolutely not. We're the children of a master creator, and he delights in creating beauty.
Okay, so you can't wear a tight shirt. You can't move your body in a certain type of way. Don't do any provocative poses. Don't do a lot of selfies. And you guys, it's okay. The reason why we're telling you not to do this is because God, you're honoring God. Don't say certain words. Don't cuss. Don't curse.
And we should be too. But just because something gets attention does not mean it's beautiful. People will stare far more at the accident on the side of the road than they will at a beautiful sunrise.
So apparently, a girl wearing a tank top and yoga pants is an accident. It's slut shaming. It's equating a woman's entire physical aspect down to her sexuality. Literally saying that a girl that wears leggings and tank tops is a slut and an accident.
There's a big difference. Tyler already talked about mimicking the trends of celebrities. And last, prepare to wear the temple garment, and if you are endowed, wear it properly. Weeding out your wardrobes, our wardrobes, is going to be very unpleasant to begin with. Washing up our behaviors will take effort, and submitting to correction isn't often a fun thing to do.
They're asking their followers to submit to these changes, to throw clothes out that do not abide by these rules, and take this as a correction. Now, I want to mention that all of these changes are happening because Dave Watson becomes the prophet, but I also want to remind you that these changes come into place after the entire Brown family blows up. By this time when this was done, it was 2022, and every single one of Kody's wives had left but one. The women leaving caused a huge discussion in the group. Huge. Because the women that were inside saw Christine leaving, who was royal blood, blue blood. They saw Mary leaving. Her mom was like so up there with like Owen and Rulin, and they saw Janelle leave. It caused and reverberated an example to the women that if you want to leave, you can. There is a way out. You don't have to stay. And as the Brown family imploded, the AUB has become more insular because they don't want anyone to watch what's happening to the Browns. And they're going to blame the Browns blow up on the fact that they wore tank tops or they're wearing leggings, you know, stupid things like that.
And as the scripture I read stated, it will seem painful for...
Yes. Christine leaving is a huge issue because Christine was the primary voice, one of the biggest voices for this group for advocating for plural marriage. Christine was part of Safety Net. She worked with lawmakers. She worked with the US Census. She worked with the Attorney General. She was a huge proponent for plural marriage, and she was part of the big push that helped decriminalize it. When she left, that made people do a double take. Like, wait a minute, this is a woman that told all of us that this is what we were supposed to be doing. So don't look at the accident that the Browns have caused.
The present. I'm going to read that last part again. Now, no chastening seems to be joyful for the present, but painful. Nevertheless, afterwards it yields the peaceable fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. I want to ask you guys to do something this week or tonight even. Search and find out what those peaceable fruits of righteousness are. And then as you look through your closet and examine your habits, ask yourself, are these things, are my possessions worth more than those fruits and the possession of those? I love you all very much, and I've been really encouraged.
Okay, so that's sort of what I wanted to show you about from their speeches on modesty. I'll show you more of this. We'll probably get into more of these videos in another live stream. But I'm going to show you the list that she read because she left something out that is very important here. 1 second here. Okay. So let me just show you what is on their list. Okay. So this is what is on the list. Leggings, tights, and yoga pants, spandex, lycra, nylon, and such athletic wear are not acceptable alternatives to pants and are only suitable as underclothing. Tops and dresses worn over leggings should completely cover leggings front and back to the knee or further. Skin tight t-shirts, muscle t-shirts, biker shorts, jeggings, contour outlining shirts, or skirts are not suitable public attire. Don't reveal underwire, bra straps, boxer tops. Don't wear curve hug. This is what they're telling children. Look at this, number 4. Sorry. This isn't a list for children. Don't wear curve hugging belly outlining pregnancy attire. Isn't that weird? Why are you telling women to like hide their bellies? Why are you telling 12-year-old girls to hide their bellies? It almost seems like you are trying to have them wear looser clothing so that if there was a teen pregnancy, no one would see it. It almost kind of seems like you're trying to tell children to hide their pregnancies. Don't wear shredded jeans. Don't reveal, outline, or otherwise spotlight skin exposure, shape hugging, posturing, or language. Prepare to wear temple garments. And then they're trying to get them to get off YouTube, TikTok, and celebrities. Because right now, there is a huge wave of AUB apostates that are on TikTok. They are on YouTube. There are channels like mine that have apostates that give me information. They want to make sure that none of their kids are going to these resources and seeing the truth. But they're doing this under the guise of, you shouldn't be going there because we don't want you to mimic them because they're ungodly. But what they really are doing is they're trying to prevent them from going to TikTok, going to YouTube, and finding people that are speaking the truth about the AUB. It's just another way to control. In a letter, and then here's another thing. In a purity for children, they're telling children that procreation is their only reason why anyone should be intimate. Again, why are you telling this to children, right? It says, by design and commandment, we produce a righteous seed under a holy covenant, showcasing your fertility or the holy product of it by flaunting your baby bump as a sweet performance art by social media posting, by attention-seeking language, or by wearing tight clothing that forces attention to the breast curves of the belly and crotch, the devolt or extrusion of the belly button. Invites all, not just joyful multiply and replenishes, but also carbon counters unbridled body positivityists and scornful abortionists, to make your holy of holies nothing more than a kiosk in a mall. Lots of word salad. But again, telling them, children, do not flaunt your baby bumps. Female modesty is the flip side of masculine chivalry. Chivalry is important as a kind of spiritual discipline to avoid the potential abuses of particular male power. For example, we engage in exercises like giving up seats to women, holding doors, carrying bags, not because women are not actually capable of doing these things, but rather it's important for society that we as men train ourselves to put our comparatively greater physical gifts at the service of women. See how they're framing this? As a symbolic statement of recognition that this power should be never used against them, and as spiritual conditioning to prevent us from slipping into such abuse. Likewise, women simply by nature, natural dynamics of human sexuality possess much greater powers God damn it, we have boobs, right? Much greater powers of influence over men than vice versa. Like chivalry, modesty, behaviors, conversations, and dress is a spiritual discipline for women by which they recognize the power discrepancy and engage in exercises to help condition themselves not to abuse it by manipulating or degrading men. So women are in charge of a man's reaction to her body. Sounds very IBLP, right? Sounds very purity culture. And they're saying that if they wear a tank top and yoga pants, they're going to send a man down into a path where he will fall away from the fullness of the gospel, and that he may or may not become a man that harms other women. And they're saying that a woman that's wearing that is encouraging men to become SAers and Rers. Because if they are R'd, if the girls are R'd, it's their fault because they wore this clothing that made that man be enticed. It's putting all responsibility on what the man does onto the girls. It's pretty sad, to be honest. Now, there is a war going on. I want to show this too. Hold on one second. Okay. Thank you for your super chat, Kiko, and thank you, Shaylee, for your super chat. Thank you. I love you, Kiko. Kiko, you've been a member since the beginning. Okay. The reason why they are adding, the reason why they're adding these rules is because there is a war going on. There's escalating immorality in the group. There's actually exponentially increased sexual addictions in our girls, not just our boys anymore. How are they figuring this out? How are they deciding that a 12-year-old girl has a sexual addiction? Like, how do they qualify that? Cultural expectations that feminine clothing from sports to formal wear needs to be more revealing. On every front, we are told to applaud, celebrate, and display and enjoy the body. Therapists counsel it's important to connect with your sensual self. Even Mormons say that, like, this hole in the world, but not of the world thing doesn't work well for us. It bends towards elitism that makes us inaccessible and unreachable. We're dealing with sexting, oh my gosh, and all forms of immodesty. A pervasive evil is seeping like dry ice fog into our group, and studies confirm it as potent as partial nudity. Oh my gosh. What studies? I want to see their double-blind studies. Do you see how much fear they're putting into kids? Talking dirty in person or digitally. Conversations are peppered with vulgarities, innuendos, sexual slang, and humor about female products or processes. Adults are indulging in just a couple scenes and a few F words, and they listen to unashamedly unchaste music. Again, there's been that's a lot of fear to put on kids. Their double-blind studies are the gross old men whose behavior has never been checked. Correct. Okay, let's see if I have one more thing here. Are we in like the 1950s? This is a very good question. Okay, I need to take a quick break here. I need to freshen my water. So I am going to.
Or what?
Add.
Shy or nice, don't go hang out with trouble friends, going places.
I'm going to add this to this. I'm going to play this. And I will be right back.
They go thinking that, oh, it's okay, nothing will happen, or that you need to go with them to save them. Or my story, oh, Mom, we're fine. You hear that all the time. I'm fine, let me go, I'm fine, Mom. Listen to them, listen to the promptings they're receiving, they're telling you. If you want to help a friend that needs help, make sure you're bringing them to your house or going to wholesome places. Make sure of where you're going. Don't go to strangers' places like I ended up going a few times. Encourage them through your example of righteous standards. Only go places where your guardian angels can go. If you enter a home or place of business, just a home that has filthy music, has drinking or drugs going on, whatever, your guardian angels don't have to follow you in there. They're not required to go into filthy places or be there where filthy movies are or things going on. They're not required to have to be there and take part in that. So remember, you're less protected. The devil comes out in full force after dark too. Is another thing my dad told me that I wish I would have listened to all the time and gave me a curfew.
So you shouldn't have certain friends. You shouldn't go out at night. You shouldn't hang out with certain people. The devil comes out at night.
And I didn't listen to it all the time. And he's like, the devil's out all the time going after us. But when it's dark, he's like, oh yeah, it's in the dark and I can get them and they're more tired. They're easier to sway. So think of these things. Remember that when your parents are asking you things, they're a lot of times being prompted by the Lord. They've been raised by goodly parents and they're teaching you things they've been taught that are of God.
So she tells kids that when their parents are telling them to do something, hold on a second. It's almost time for my son to get ready for bed, so I got to wrap this up here. But what she's telling them, the kids, is that they need to obey their parents because everything that their parents are telling them is God inspired. They're getting a revelation from God.
And I want all of you young men to know, and old men, and all you men, boys, whatever, it's your priesthood duty to help protect the women in your lives. Protect them, stand up for them, help keep them safe. And young ladies, help protect men, the guys too, Maybe a lot of you know, all of you already know. Only those that live in the highest degree of celestial kingdom get to still stay married. Did you guys hear that? Get to keep having children in the spirit world. It's going to take a lot of work.
Okay, so she tells children ages 12 to 16 that the only way that they will be able to be with their families in heaven is if they practice plural marriage. She tells them only people that reach the highest level of the celestial kingdom, which is being either plural wife with 3 or more wives or a husband that has 3 or more wives. If you don't end up in a family like that, you will not see your family in eternity. You will not stay married in eternity. You will not be able to see your parents in eternity. So really the only way that you're going to achieve that is if you become a plural wife. So is it really a choice when they're telling children that if you don't do this, we're going to take away your family, we're going to take away your parents, we're going to take away your husband? All of that goes away in the afterworld. And they believe that their only option is through plural marriage.
It wouldn't be very cool, like I said, to get up to heaven and be like, why can't I go with my family? Or where is my family? Maybe if your parents made different choices and they were no longer get to be a family. If we don't honor and obey our earthly parents, we won't honor and obey our heavenly father and mother. We don't automatically change when we get to the other side. We don't just get a party and have fun and then get up there, woohoo, okay, give me everything, give me all the presents.
So basically, they're told that if they don't obey their parents, they're disobeying God. That's what she said. It's just so much fear that they're putting into these children, making them feel like they're going to lose everything if they don't go into plural marriage. So if you can put yourself now into Mary's shoes, okay? Mary Brown was a true believer of all of this. From the time Mary was a child, she was told that if she didn't do these things, she was going to lose her family. So now can you maybe understand that the reason why Mary stayed, even though Kody didn't want her, was because she believed that if she left, she wasn't going to be able to see her parents again in the afterworld. She wasn't going to be able to see her siblings. She wouldn't be able to see her own daughter, or her child, I guess, because Leon is non-binary. My apologies. I did not mean to misgender Leon, but she would not be able to see her child. All of that would be taken from her. All of that. It's yes, Mary's parents were extremely strict. Correct, Ellen. Oops, I'm sorry. Why did I remove that comment? I did not mean to remove that comment. I am so sorry, Ellen. She said Olive was extremely strict. That lady's voice is putting me to sleep. Yes, that's how they always talk. Try having to listen to this for this work I do.
Been a good boy, good girl. We weren't just sent here to get bodies of flesh and to party and have fun. If we don't learn obedience, we won't be able to dwell with our Father in heaven in his kingdom. His kingdom is a place of order. Without order, you have chaos and confusion. There can't be order without honor and obedience. So it's through the atonement that we get to be saved, but the atonement will have no effect on us if we aren't obedient to the laws and ordinances of the gospel.
So here's where the Mormons are very different. This AUB is different than Christians, because the Christian faith that they claim they believe that they believe in Jesus. But the Jesus that they believe in was a polygamist. He was married. He had kids. The God they believe in was a polygamist, is a polygamist. They also believe that Adam and Eve is God. So they don't believe that atonement is actually enough to get rid of your sin. And so Jesus dying on the cross isn't good enough. Jesus dying on the cross for your sins and for you being a believer and becoming coming to the gospel is not enough. He didn't atone for all sins, and if you don't obey, his atonement won't matter. And this group also believes that some sins are not atonable, which is why they practice what's called blood atonement. So there are certain sins that they believe Jesus did not die for. And those sins can only be rectified by that person who committed the sin ending their life.
So remember that. Just believing, that's the start. It's not the all. Our parents and the council members ask us to do things, and sometimes they ask really subtly, like, you have to kind of really listen or pay attention. Sometimes they outright just say something, and sometimes it's with power of things that we need to do. But they always say it with love for us. Always remember that. Sometimes little things like how to dress properly.
Is there a war on?
Okay, so here's the thing. They're saying that even though the brethren might say something that's super, super powerful, it's okay. They're only doing that because they love us. They're only taking restrictions and things away from us because they love us. They're only making up all these rules now because they love us. It's not because they don't love us. It's because they do love us. There is a lot of difference between huge. I want to be very clear. They might have similarities in purity and in chastity, but their beliefs are on different stratospheres. They do not believe in the same things. They do not believe in the same God. They do not believe in the same Jesus. They do not believe in the same structure of authority. They do not believe really much of anything that beyond like, encouragement and similarities of purity and parents, God-inspired relationships. Beyond that, there's not a lot of similarities. I just want to be super clear. It's more consistent with the LDS church than it would be with any Christian faith. Michelle says, I used to be mainstream Mormon. LDS church I'm Christian now, and it's completely different. Thank you. They actually are LDS, regardless if you want to believe it or not. They actually practice they practice the LDS church the way it was designed by Joseph Smith and the following prophets like Brigham Young and the other ones that followed Brigham Young. They do follow every single rule that Joseph Smith put into place. They follow all of Joseph Smith's revelations. They read the Book of Mormon. They believe that the mainstream church defected from God and defected from Joseph Smith's teaching when they got rid of polygamy. They believe that the mainstream church is the actual, they're like the apostates. They're lost. They're not following the true teachings of Joseph Smith. They believe Doctrine and Covenants 132. Doctrine and Covenants 132 is still on the LDS website. Let me show you. Some LDS people that come onto my channel don't believe me that this is still in their belief system, and it's right there. But the missionaries might never show you this. Here you go. This is directly from the LDS Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. This is explaining that the only way into the celestial kingdom is through plural marriage. The only way through eternity is through plural marriage. This is on their website. So a lot of people end up in fundamentalist groups because they end up getting into the Doctrine and Covenants and they say, hey, wait a minute. The only way for us to get into the celestial kingdom is through polygamy. The church has deceived us. The only reason they got rid of polygamy was because they had to, or they couldn't become a state. They had to abolish plural marriage and denounce it as a church, or Utah would not get statehood. When they were about to lose, when Utah was potentially going to lose federal money, and there was going to be some penalties to the church, they could no longer discriminate against Black people. So in 1978, they allowed Black men into the priesthood. So they had a revelation. But prior to that, they were not allowed in temple. This is on their website. Look at this. Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, right there. Section 132. This is their website. Someone literally just said that this is not the church's website, and they probably believe that because the church is hiding this from them. This is on the church's website. If a man marry a wife by my world, which is by law and by the new and everlasting covenant, and it is sealed unto them by the Holy Spirit, by he who is anointed unto them, of who I have appointed the power and the keys. It's verily, verily, I say unto you, if a man marry a wife according to my world, and they are sealed by the Holy Spirit, it says, where's the thing about Sarah? Hold on. Abraham received concubines, and they bore him children, and it was accounted unto him for righteousness, because they were given unto him. And he abode in by law, as Isaac also, and Jacob did none other things than that which they were commanded. David also received many wives and concubines, and also Solomon and Moses, my servants. God commanded Adam and Sarah gave Hagar to Abraham to what? To wife. And why did she do that? Because this was the law, and from Hagar sprang many people. This therefore was fulfilling, among other things, the promises. Was Abraham therefore under condemnation? Verily I say unto you, nay. He was commanded to offer his son Isaac. Nevertheless, it was written. He's saying that his wife Sarah gave Abraham Hagar to make more babies for him. David's wives and concubines were given unto him to me by the hand of Nathan. So when I call them concubines, that's what they're called in Doctrine and Covenants 132. Plural wives are called concubines. Their only purpose is to bring babies for the kingdom. It even says that a husband is not committing adultery if he has more than one lie under the law, as long as they've been sealed for time and all eternity in the temple. This is on the church website. See? Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's their website. I'm surprised. Why are they hiding this? Because they don't want people to know that it's still a part of their beliefs. They've never scrubbed this from their beliefs. The reason we have a problem with Mormon fundamentalism and polygamy to this day is because it's still in their Doctrine and Covenants. This was the very last revelation that Joseph Smith ever wrote before he died. This was the revelation that not only commanded plural marriage to get into the celestial kingdom, but it introduced the idea of eternal marriages in heaven. And exaltation is only gained through the new and everlasting covenant. The terms of the covenant are set forth. Celestial marriage and a continuation of the family unit enable men to become gods. The straight and narrow say leads to eternal lives. The law is given relative to blasphemy against the Holy Ghost. Promises of eternal increase and exaltation are made to prophets and saints in all ages. In order to get an increase means they add another wife, and exaltation is only achieved after 3 wives. This is all on their website. It's not that you're not a good Mormon. It's that the church is intentionally hiding this from you. They also, still in their beliefs, have this whole idea that the Canaanites are cursed. And the Canaanites have darker skin. And so their goal, the mission of the LDS Church until 1978, was to ensure that they overpopulated people of color so that white people could reign supreme and be the master race. That is still on their website to this day. But publicly, they say that Black men and women can be in the temple now, and Black men and men of color can be priesthood holders. Doctrine and Covenants 132. If you are LDS, go read section 132 of the D&C. Mormons still practice spiritual polygamy. So missionaries are not given this information. And so the reason why fundamentalists get so many converts is because this stuff is still on their website. And if it's on their website, they're not going to, as long as it's on their website, it's going to cause people to dig deeper into who Joseph Smith was, what were his revelations, what were his rules, what were his commandments. And if they continue to have this on their website, any member of their church can end up on that page and see, I need to become a plural wife, or I need to have multiple wives to achieve the goal. And they'll learn that the church lied to them. And so that's how they end up in these polygamous cults. Beverly says, hugs for being shook. So when people from the church come onto my page and say that I'm not speaking about Joseph Smith correctly, I just always want to draw people back to the LDS website and say, go to Doctrine and Covenants 132 and read it for yourself. It's all there in black and white. I'm your sister wife. Does that mean all of you guys are my sister wives? I don't share. Canis Dearest is mine. Ladies, back off. Kody's family joined the church. They suddenly had a revelation to join the church once the church allowed Black people into the priesthood. So there was a huge exodus of people from the LDS church in 1978 once they started allowing Black people into the church, because true believers have been told their whole lives that the Canaanites are evil and wicked and they're destroying our society. And then suddenly the church is going to allow these evil and wicked people that they've been told their whole lives are evil and wicked into their churches. So a lot of people left the church and went into fundamentalism. So every time they make a change, it just further, it helps the polygamous groups grow. It helps them get race. Yes, it is racist. It's very racist. 100%. It's white supremacy. Yes. All of this is still in the LDS church. All of it. Correct. All right. So please don't get upset with me for sharing this information with you today. Lately, I feel like I'm like on the, I'm on whatever you call that. Like I can't win if I'm losing, or I feel like sometimes when I share this information, people get upset with me. They think that I've gone to the bathroom in their Wheaties, or you know what I mean? Like I've ruined their world. I've blown up their world. And I don't want to be the person that does that. I'm just trying to explain to you the history of the church and why polygamous groups are still to this day so successful in getting people into their groups. All right. So I want to just run through if there's any questions here. The lady's voice on the recording is putting me to sleep. It's putting me to sleep too. So we'll stop. Pammy D says, hi, Katie. Hello. Rue says, super sticker. Okay, then I want to just shout out Tracy. Thank you for becoming a member. Kara, thank you for becoming a member. Michelle Myers, thank you for becoming a member. Kristen, thank you for becoming a member. Ashley Baker, thank you for becoming a member. AK Dudley, thank you for becoming a member. Celtic Moon, thank you for becoming a member. Angela A, Gina Fitzgerald, Jenny T. Oh, and Celtic Moon gifted a membership to someone. So somebody became a member tonight for free. Thanks to Celtic Moon. Thank you for that. Or Celtic Moon. I'm sorry, Celtic Moon. All right. So thank you. That was very sweet of you to gift those memberships. I have been trying to use my platform to not just speak about sister wives, but to utilize it to show to you the truth behind the facade. And by now, it's very easy for people to understand that polygamy is not a good thing. But the problem is that show was on air for 18 seasons, And for all of that time, there was a lot of people believing that this was harmless. So my goal over the next few weeks is to do a live stream each weekend where we go through some of the actual, audio and the video from the group, so you can hear it in your own word, in the words that are coming directly from the group. Next week, what I'd like to do is be able to share with you some actual sermons where you'll hear Rulon Allred's voice. I'll share some audio of Lynn Thompson, who is the previous prophet who was accused by his daughter of SA, and other women in the church and children. He was the prophet that was on the show while the Browns were on television saying that they didn't have a problem of SA in their group. Lynn is also the one that said no sex outside of procreation. My son hit the wrong LOL. Thank you, Rue. My goal is to just continue to expose the atrocities that are happening in this world. And I want to be able to expand. And my husband and I actually had this wonderful date today. My husband's birthday was yesterday, and he and I went out for lunch today, and we were talking about what is the goal for Without a Crystal Ball? What do we want to do with this channel? Because my husband is as much a part of as much a part of this as me. And we started talking about, branching out into discussions about the Mormon church, a lot of the crap that's happening right now in the Mormon church when it comes to tithing and scandals with money and cover-ups and all these different offshoots that keep ending up in the news. I also want to expand further into showing the truth about polygamy. My goal is that, that this enables more people to feel compelled to speak out and tell the truth. And I want to be able to share stories beyond the headlines of sister wives. The prepper stuff is literally because they believe that their world is going to end. Ellen says, thank you for doing this. You are welcome, Ellen. So I want to thank you guys all for being here with me tonight. I want to thank everyone that did super chats, that became members. If you have not hit the subscribe button, make sure to hit the subscribe button on the way out. Make sure to hit the thumbs up button. Also, if you want to share this video, share this with friends. The best that we can do is get the truth out to help people feel empowered to share their stories. No, Kody and Robin have not moved. No, they have not moved. What is hard for me right now, my biggest takeaway from all of this is that you have all these women online that are literally obsessed with Christine and Janelle and Mary. And I want you to see who you're obsessed with. Now that they're out, it's fine, but they were part of a vehicle that normalized this. And if you are and they profited off of that. They profited off of normalizing this culture when they knew full well that what they were saying on the show was a lie. Christine, to this day, still lies about her grandfather. She, to this day, still says that her grandfather was only arrested because he was practicing plural marriage. That is 100% false. Rulon Allred was trading and helping traffic children. Rulon Allred had minors that he took as wives. His youngest wife was 13 years old, almost 14. When he was out on parole, he added a minor child as his wife. She lies when she says that the wives were never reunited. That's a complete lie. They all lived near each other, even after his death. Christine has also never said on the show how her grandfather died. Oh, I'm rambling? Okay. So she's never said that her grandfather was murmured by Ervil LeBaron's wives, that one of his wives was working that day and that wife, Melba, witnessed it and had to go to her husband's body that was on the floor dead. They've never said that on the show. They've never shared on the show that Owen Allred, who was the prophet when they all got married, was accused by a woman named Virginia Hill of stealing more than $1.5 million. They have never shared on the show that Virginia won a lawsuit against them, and members of the sect were forced to pay back money to Virginia to the tune of $6.5 million. The leaders of the AUB didn't pay back Virginia. It was the people that knew nothing about the fraud and the theft that had to pay back Virginia. They had to take away all of their money. They had to take away money from their children's futures, money from their life savings to help pay off the fraud that Owen and his friends did. And they hid money. Owen hid money in tin cans in his bathroom. This is the good guy that they all talk about on the show. Rulin had children brides. Rulin's friends were trading and bartering children as wives. Two of Rulin's friends were accused of kidnapping girls literally off the street and taking them as wives. So when you're following these women now and they've perpetuated this and they've endorsed this and they've normalized this, and yes, these girls were all brainwashed. But when you have people from the culture, I want you guys to hear those voices of the survivors that are saying, you harmed us by doing this show. I want you to hear the survivors from the AUB that have said, you have been gaslighting us for over a decade, telling us that what we experienced did not happen. You mistreated us. You brought your aunt on the show and called her dangerous. You had victims of the Kingstons on your show that you minimized and made them feel like their abuse wasn't real. You helped decriminalize an effective religious mafia that is subjugating, trafficking women and children for labor. This is why, is this slanderous? I love her. Does she hate me? I'm going to put her back in timeout. She just wants to be in timeout. She just wants to be in timeout. All of this is facts. All of it is a religious mafia. It is 100% a religious mafia. Ellen is actually from this group. Actually, Ellen, hold on. I need to do something with Ellen. Okay. I told Ellen in our conversations privately this week that I was going to make her a moderator. So I have to, now that she's here, I'm adding her as a moderator because Ellen is so knowledgeable. Ellen has helped me tremendously understand this group. Ellen has been a victim of many people in this group. The amount of essay that happens in this group is astronomical. The women that are harmed by this group it's hard to believe that there's not a single woman or child that hasn't been hurt by the men in this group. Yes. So when I say that I want them to correct what they've done, I want them to be happy and to be free, but I also want them to recognize at some point that what they've done has caused harm. That's all. And yeah. Congratulations, Ellen. Yes, Ellen is such a sweetheart. Do you have any insight into TLC contacts as a reporter? So an agreement of sister wives is that they will not talk negatively about polygamy. And another agreement is that they will never make polygamy look bad. And that's a part of their contracts. And so they will never bring on an opposing view to actually share the truth about polygamy. They will never cover the crimes that happen in polygamy. They will never talk about the SA. They'll never talk about the trafficking. They'll never talk about any of it because they are not allowed to talk about the truth. And Kody will not answer any questions that are truthful. So it's sad. And Christine's new marriage is extremely concerning because she's still programmed. Even though she's out, she's still programmed. And it's very common for women that are coming out of the cult to end up in abusive marriages all over again. And it's super important for survivors to get therapy to deconstruct. If they talked about the truth, they would probably open themselves to lawsuits by the people the show has harmed. Correct. If they spoke about the truth, they would also be opening themselves up to criminal charges. They never showed that Kody and the wives had multiple bankruptcies, that they were abusing the welfare system, that there's just been so much they've covered up. And TLC and Tim Gibbons and all of the production and all of these people are profiting off a crime. They're profiting off the promotion of the crime. Now, my critics will say, you're profiting off the promotion of the crime. No, I will never profit off the promotion of polygamy. I will seek to work in contrast to what they're doing. And money that I make here, I am able to donate to help people leave polygamy. I am not profiting off the lies. I'm trying to spread the truth and give a platform to the people that have been hurt. So that's what I have for today. Tomorrow, next week, we'll do another live, and we'll dig deeper. So I'm going to try to do these lives every weekend. It'll be either Friday night or Saturday night, depending on which one of my husband and I are in charge of taking care of our son. So tonight is my husband's night. So next week, I will be doing my live on Friday night instead of Saturday night. I hope you enjoy these live streams. I feel like this live stream did a lot better than the last one. And I truly hope that all of you learned something tonight. If you have some information that you'd like to share with me, if you're someone from this culture that has tips that you'd like to give to me, you can email me at tips@withoutacrystalball.com. You can also send me a message on my Facebook or on my Instagram. I would be live every day if I were doing it for money. Maybe, yeah. So thank you guys so much for all of your help. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, like button, and thank you to all of the members. Thank you for all being so kind to Ellen. Ellen has found a community here, and that I love that for her. And to all the other AUB apostates out there tonight, my hearts are with you. I see you and I believe you, and we will keep rolling on. Good night, everyone. Bye.